so that's really this daily devotional. It's the time factor. And so we'll talk about that, the importance of setting the time. If you want to be a horse trainer and you want that horse to advance, it's the consistency. If you want to be successful in roping or training a stock dog or wrestling or football, anything, there's practice. And so that's one of the things that we're really going to go through is practicing the presence of God, of eliminating the resistance in your prayer closet. So how do we do that? Well, you got to set the time. If you want to be a serious anything in life, you set the time and you practice it. So that's really the focus of this entire discipleship course is teaching how to help in that. So time or spiritual warfare. And that's where the war comes in, is we get distracted from a lot of other things. When we wake up there's 24 hours in a day. And although we have the supernatural power and presence living on the inside of us, we get distracted by the things of the world. The next one is stock dog or spiritual instinct. And that's one of the things as a believer, we naturally have a spiritual instinct that's part of your spiritual gifting. And it's different in different believers, and so we'll kind of go through that. And sometimes just like a stock dog, they have this instinct. My stock dogs get out and they're bred to work. So they're chasing cows and running around, and I holler at them and get out of there. Although the instinct is right, although they have the one of the things as a son of God is we have power and authority. So although the power comes from the instinct of something that you need's done, they need to hear my voice. They need to have the authority of the permission to do what I've called them to do. And I've struggled with that a lot. I have an instinct and I want to teach or I want to preach, but sometimes I've ran out and I'm just chasing cows and I'm really not hearing his voice. Although I have the power, I don't have the authority. And that's one of the things as we look at Jesus, he had power and authority. So we break down power and authority or for the permission of the instinct. So we break that down using stock dog parables. The next one is harness and packing or prayer burdens. That's one of the classes that I teach at TVCC is packing and driving. And so we get burdened. We get burdened by the things of the world. We'll talk about that. He says, come to me all that are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. And then we have ministry prayer burdens, that we get for like Nehemiah. He had a burden, a heaviness for the wall that had been built. And so we'll talk about the different prayer burdens, the prayer burdens that we receive from, the things of the world that we shouldn't be packing. And then the prayer burdens that he gives us, for other people, and intercessory prayer and that. The next thing is driving or being equally yoked. And that's as believers, as Amaya and I are we equally yoked? I mean, we're believers and we know where we're going for eternity when we die, but are we packing the same load? Or is she, that for this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother and the two shall become in one flesh? Are we burdened by the same thing? Am I spending time with her? Are we praying together? Are we going the same speed, in the same direction? And that's one of the things and I think sometimes the thing that we get over even in being married and being believers is going the same speed in the same direction, and even though sometimes we're probably both trying to serve God and do what he's called us to do, I'm going really fast and I feel like she's never going fast enough, and that just causes her to drag her feet. And so it's part of the thing we want to go through is just Amaya and I marriage. And to be honest, I don't really think we've ever had any problems in our marriage, any disagreements, but we've seen other people that have struggled. And so bronc riding, we go through strongholds. And one of the big things with strongholds is it's a thought pattern or it's reasoning. And one of the things, it's really easy to sit in the stands and be a church goer, go to church on Sunday and a critic. And I didn't get a lot out of the sermon. I didn't get a lot out of the music. You just sit in the stands and you're an expert on everything. And that's easy to go to the rodeo and sit in the stands but it's different when you enter. It's different when you prepare different when you go to the rodeo and you're entered, your broncs in the chute. You should be practicing at home, and that's really where that practicing the presence. And what happens is, as believers, is sometimes we enter the bronc riding, we get bucked off, and we get hurt, we get wounded, we break bones, we get concussions, and at that time, that's where the strongholds come in. It's like, man, maybe I did that wrong, maybe I shouldn't have done this, and no. Blessed are those that are persecuted for righteousness' sake. You get beat up, you get broken, you get wounded. And so that's really why I want to help these believers. I see so many believers that have a genuine encounter with God. They want to serve him. They start taking steps of obedience to do what God has called him to do. And that's part of this. It's called the Gideon's 300. God spoke and said, "Hello, Gideon, mighty man of valor." And that's part of that as a believer. When you hear God's voice and he speaks to you and you tells you to do something, it's not going to get easier. And that's what I want to come alongside is I rode broncs for years and I coach rough stock riders for years. It's a contact sport. I do football and I do wrestling. That's what I love about the kingdom. It is a contact sport. And so that's what I want to try to help believers is, what is that process? So many believers, they get beat up when they start serving him that they quit entering, and so that's what I want to try to share there. Next one is, just all the stuff that God teaches me on a ranch here is he kind of puts the parables to help cowboys understand the kingdom. Fencing. And if you're a rancher, if you're a farmer, we build fence. You got to build fence and set boundaries. The fencing is the boundaries that we've set is the boundaries that God has for us. And so as we go through scripture and we look at that, in the promised land, God gave part of our inheritance as a child of God is he sets the boundaries that you're supposed to go as a believer. That's part of the good works that we've been predestined to walk in, and that's part of our testimony. That's part of where the land that he's given us. And so like an example would be Peter, he was sent to the Gentile, where Paul, he was sent primarily no other way around. Peter was sent to the Jew, Paul was sent to the Gentile. And part of that is knowing that you have an inheritance. You're born again, and that's tied to the work that he's given you. And that's the land of your testimony of where he's called. So part of my testimony, part of the land that he's given me is cowboys and cowgirls, business owners that are struggling with owning a business and competing. That's the struggle that I've had. And specifically in the online videos, we'll really go into the spirit of mammon. Scripture says we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but principalities and powers of darkness. If you're a business owner or a sports competitor, that will specifically be the spirit that you'll be wrestling with, is the spirit of mammon. And scripture is very, very, very clear. You cannot serve God and mammon. And so I'll do a lot of online readings on that to determine as a business owner or sports competitor if you've begun to serve mammon. And so that'll be the boundaries that God has for you, that he sets. Sometimes as Christians, we set healthy boundaries. And scripturally, the healthy boundaries that God sets is the demonic strongholds, the land that he's given you to shine light. And like Paul, he wanted to go to Asia, and God forbid him to go to Asia. Said, no, I do not want you going over there. I want you going over here. And so as a Christian, it's very important to know where you've been called and where he wants you proclaiming the good news, where he wants you sharing the testimony of.
As well as the boundaries that he sets as far as living a life that is honoring and glorifying to him. I mean, he sets boundaries of sin, things that go completely against him and his ways. And when we are living a life of intentional sin, how that pulls us out of his will. And he creates those boundaries, not because he is all about the rules, but because he is all about our good and our what is best for us as parents. You don't let your kid just run out in the street. You have boundaries for them because you want to protect them and keep them safe, and you want the best for them. And that's another part of the boundaries, is God has a way of doing things. And when we are when we are not walking in his way of doing things, you get hit by a bus, right? I mean, it's natural consequences of the ways that we do things in sin. So that's another way of his boundaries, is that he sets up hard boundaries and those lines. But the beautiful thing is he already paid the price. So when we cross those boundaries, to bring us back in and to help us through. So